talking about the biggest sporting event in the United States. John here.
Hey, I'm Becky.
In this lesson, you'll learn the prepositions at, on, and in relation to time. The conversation takes place at home.
It's between Kate and Sean.
The speakers are friends, so they'll use informal English. Okay, let's listen to the conversation.
Sean, when is the Super Bowl?
It's usually in February, but the date changes.
What date was it in 2015?
It was on February 1st.
What time does it usually start?
It starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you.
Listen to the conversation one time slowly.
Sean, when is the Super Bowl?
It's usually in February, but the date changes.
What date was it in 2015?
It was on February 1st.
What time does it usually start?
It starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you.
In this conversation, Kate was checking the date and time of the Super Bowl.
Maybe she wants to go next year?
Maybe. It's important to double check the date and time if you're invited somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of invitations, especially between friends, are given verbally.
So the details might not be written down. I usually only get actual invitations for big events like weddings.
Me too, so I always double check the date and time. Also the meeting place.
That's important too. You don't want to wait in the wrong place.
I've waited in the wrong part of the train station before. It was embarrassing.
I can only imagine. What happened?
Well, I had my smartphone with me, so I double-checked the details and then went to the right place.
Smartphones make things much easier. If I'm having a party, I make a Facebook event and invite my friends that way.
That's really convenient. I often get invites by text or messenger apps.
Okay, let's take a look at the vocabulary from this lesson. The first word is
When?
a question word used to ask about time.
When? When?
Next we have
Super Bowl.
an annual event that is the championship game in the National Football League.
Super Bowl. Super Bowl.
Next we have
Usually.
normally, commonly.
Usually. Usually.
Next we have
Date.
a day in the calendar.
Date. Date.
Next we have
To change.
to alter.
To change. To change.
Next we have
February.
the second month of the year.
February. February.
Next we have
First.
ordinal number for one.
First. First.
Next we have
To start.
to begin something.
To start. To start.
Next we have
PM.
the 12-hour period that is after 12 in the afternoon and before midnight.
PM. PM.
And last,
Eastern.
situated in the east, one of the time zones that is used in America.
Eastern. Eastern.
Let's have a closer look at the usage of some of the words and phrases from this lesson. The first word is
Usually.
meaning normally, commonly. What can you tell us about this?
This is an adverb of frequency. It tells us how often something happens.
We can use usually to describe something we do often, but not 100% of the time.
Yes, it's more like 90% of the time.
How do you use it in a sentence?
You should put it before the verb. For example, usually plays baseball.
Can you give us an example using this word?
Sure. For example, you can say, he usually exercises after finishing work.
In other words, he normally exercises after finishing work. Okay, what's the next word?
First.
Which is the ordinal number for 1. What can you tell us about this?
It's an ordinal number, so you use it for dates and for order.
So if you win a race, you are first.
That's right. Ordinal numbers in English follow a pattern of adding th to the number.
Like 4th, 8th, 13th, and so on.
But a few numbers like 1 have special ordinal numbers, so be careful.
Can you give us an example using this word?
Sure, for example, you can say, my birthday is on October 1st.
Okay, what's the next phrase?
Eastern Time.
Which is a time zone in the US. What can you tell us about this?
Eastern comes from the direction east and means things that are to the east.
And time?
Time is a measure in hours and minutes, so Eastern Time means the time zone that the east coast of the US follows.
Right. The US is a big country, so different parts have different time zones.
If you see TV shows advertised, you might see different start times listed, and that's why.
Can you give us an example using this word?
Sure. For example, you can say, do you know what time that is in Eastern Time?
Okay, now on to the lesson focus. In this lesson, you'll learn how to use prepositions at, on, and in relation to time. For this lesson, we will look at 3 prepositions that are easily confused.
Yes, they get mixed up all the time. The good news is that their use is pretty simple. You just have to remember it.
Remembering is the hard part, though.
I'm sure you can do it, John.
Thank you. The first preposition is at.
We use at to talk about time. If we want to say when something will happen and use a time, we need at.
So we say at 3 o'clock or at 5:30.
That's right. At goes before the time.
How do we make a sentence using this?
The usual way is to say what will happen, followed by at and the time.
I wake up at 7 o'clock.
That's it. Another example is, the accident occurred at midnight last night, and police are looking for witnesses.
That sentence was more difficult, but the grammar was the same. At midnight.
Right. It stays the same, even if the sentence is easy or difficult.
Our next preposition is on.
We use on for days of the week. On Monday, on Wednesday, like that.
I didn't study on Wednesday.
Well, your sentence is right, but you should study every day.
I know. The last preposition for this lesson is in.
We use in for months of the year. For example, in February, in December, for example.
I went to Australia in September.
Lucky you. We also use in for time periods such as in the morning or in the evening.
Although I'm always tired, I always read to my children in the evening.
Or my birthday is in April.
So to sum up, we use at for time, on for days, and in for months and time periods.
Listeners, make sure to check the lesson notes PDF for more examples and additional information about the prepositions covered in this lesson.
Okay, that's all for this lesson. Thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Sean, when is the Super Bowl?
It's usually in February, but the date changes.
What date was it in 2015?
It was on February 1st.
What time does it usually start?
It starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you.